Our children are priceless, and we would do anything to protect them. So why aren't you using Go Free to protect them from the most harmful ideas? Decades in the making, Go Free is a simple yet brilliant practice designed to free us from destructive socio-political ideas. As words are the tools with which we think, Go Free promotes precise, simple, and targeted language to counteract psychological warfare. When you go free of the system's control over your word choice, you liberate your thinking. As you grow, you can empower others. And the most important thing you can do is inoculate our children against the ideas that are meant to harm them.
I was glad that somebody turned up because the space crashed and I just managed to reconnect, I think, in the nick of time, and I was wondering if other people were able to connect or not. Hopefully it's not going to be a whole evening of tech issues. Welcome, New Hampshire Patriot. Your mic should be coming through in a second, brother. Greetings, cool Papa J Magic. Good to see you. Just getting going. How are you today, New Hampshire Patriot?
Good afternoon, CKO. Thank you for the mic. If I may add, just I hope everybody did something today positive for white well-being, showing what it is to be a good white person, just not only to the public, but to your children and the people around you. That's all I have.
Hopefully so. And I mean, it's evening time for me, but I know that for others it's midday, afternoon, or for some people even morning time. So there's still plenty of scope yet for some white well-being activities and time in our day. Thank you for the upliftment. Hi Hans, how are you today? I've just sent your co-host. You should have that coming through now. Good evening, Biospirit. Let me get you set up. And once again, I can't help myself. I've instinctively said good evening, and it's good morning to you. How are you doing, Hans? Oh, I think Hans's connection has dropped. Biospirit, how are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. I actually made it on time today. Yay!
That's lovely. Thank you for spending your morning with us. Hans is just reconnecting. There we go. Welcome, Ardent Party. Good to see you. Mic request is on the way. Go ahead, brother. Yeah, go ahead, Ardent Party.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize you were talking to me. I thought you had said somebody else. Before you guys get going, I just wanted to invite you all to come and watch Discordant Dragons with He is the Eunuch tonight over on Rumble. I'll be appearing, and it's going to be fully about Charlie Kirk. So it might be an interesting thing for you guys. Okay, that's it. Bye bye.
Yeah, great stuff. If you have the link, post it in the comments, and then people can find it from there a little easier. Okie dokie, let's get the intro done and we'll get going. Welcome everyone to the Monday edition of the Shade Tree White Wellbeing No White Guilt Space. We hold this space every day at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on X. We are a no white guilt community that meets to practice the concepts and lexicon developed by Mr. Jason Kerner, Mr. No White Guilt himself. You can find Jason here on X as at No White Guilt NWG, or on YouTube and other platforms as simply No White Guilt. You can also find his work on the web at nowhiteguilt.org. We discuss a wide variety of topics of interest to white people and look for ways to apply solutions to the problems our people face. We run pretty casually here. Please kindly raise your hand if you'd like to jump in. Otherwise, I will call on speakers in turn for their thoughts. If you'd like to jump into the conversation, feel free to request a mic and I will get you set up. We ask that all people comport themselves as much as possible to the Go Free lexicon and dialect. Don't interrupt other speakers and act like a proper lady or gentleman of the West. So with that out of the way, yeah, another Monday upon us. It's great to be here with you all. I was just saying to New Hampshire Patriot that it's evening time, of course, for me. And I certainly appreciate having time with you all under the shade tree to start my week well. I do have a Westman of the day today. And before I reveal him, in fact, let me pull up something into the Jumbotron as I'm speaking. I have very much had on my mind the topic of white, male, masculine leadership. It's been in my thoughts, well, for quite some time, but quite prominently since we had the space where we looked at the tomb of Maria Magdalena Langens and the section about medieval European knighthood and the sort of journey from that into what we consider gentlemanly behavior amongst our people these days. And there's been a whole variety of things that have popped up since, too many to mention really, but a couple of them. One has been a couple of snarky comments directed towards this community and Jason. Another was the display at the Tommy Robinson Unite the Kingdom event of the hacker dance on stage, and I think many of you are already familiar with my thoughts on that. And yesterday Hans made a comment that very much as well caught my attention, about imagine if we could have, or to get white leaders to adopt the strategy of having a starting point that instead of coming from the current perspective of a white negative social morality asking if things are racist, coming from the strategy with a start point of, is this anti-white? And so this topic of leadership has been really very much on my mind. And I also saw another video, which I'll probably share a little bit later, which spoke to another aspect that people rarely seem to consider or talk about, which is fealty and the people who support the masculine leadership role. And so I've been thinking about this in terms of society and especially young men coming into their own and how our young boys are raised. And with all that in mind, I selected my Westman of the day, and I have chosen William Marshall. And you can see some representations of him in the post I've just put in the Jumbotron. William Marshall is often hailed as the greatest knight who ever lived. He was an Anglo-Norman warrior and statesman, and one of the most legendary figures of medieval England. He was born in around, either 1146 or 1147, and he came from, quite humble origins, and he eventually rose to become the first Earl of Pembroke. And you can see in the first image, the heraldry on his chest is his coat of arms as the first Earl of Pembroke. And his life story is uniquely preserved in L'Histoire de Guillaume le Maréchal, which is a biography which was commissioned by his son after his death. And this is the only known medieval biography of anyone who is not a royal figure. So I think that gives something of an idea of how he was seen and the high regard in which he was held. His childhood was a time of chaos. He was born obviously in the 1146, 1147, and we had at that time this 12th century civil war going on between King Stephen and Empress Matilda. At around age 6, he was actually taken as a hostage to be used for ransom in excuse me, in the siege of Newbury Castle. And it's famously reported that his father John refused to pay the ransom for him and said that he didn't care if they flayed his hide to make a purse from it. But somehow or another he managed to survive this event, and at 12 he was shipped off to Normandy, where he began training as a knight, where he learned chivalry, combat skills, court politics, and so on. And during that time he was given the nickname of Greedy Gut for his strong appetite. He was knighted in 1166, and he spent much of his youth basically touring around Europe and participating in tournaments, jousting tournaments and melees, these brutal sort of mock battles where knights would capture each other, as you know, capture their foes for ransom. And through doing this, he was very, very successful, and he built significant wealth and reputation. He was undefeated in over 500 of these events. At one point, whilst fighting in Western France, he was captured and ransomed again, this time by Eleanor of Aquitaine. And some of you might remember my speaking on Eleanor of Aquitaine some weeks ago, maybe a couple of months ago. The BBC did the most appalling, insulting disservice to Queen Eleanor by portraying her as an obese black woman in a blonde wig, twerking and bawling about single motherhood being the hardest job that there is, which is quite outrageous and really unbefitting the character. Anyway, back to William. His loyalty very much defined his life and his career. He served Henry II, Richard I, King John, Henry III, and he was also guardian and tutor to the young King Henry III, as well as serving for his regency. Whilst under King John in 1215, he helped negotiate the Magna Carta, and at age 70, he led the royal forces to victory against the French invasion in the Second Battle of Lincoln, which ended the First Barons' War. And it was noted that he personally charged into the fray looking to capture French nobles for ransom. So he clearly hadn't lost any of the passion from his tournament days. And then, yeah, as his life was sort of neared its end, he fulfilled a vow that he had made in his youth as a crusader. He joined the Knights Templar, and on his deathbed, he was buried in London's Temple Church, where there was still an effigy of him. And he was eulogized as the best knight ever lived, which was a sentiment echoed, by his enemies in France also. His various descendants linked him to later English monarchs, from the Plantagenets to the Tudors. And ultimately, his career and his life as a whole embodied chivalric ideas, bravery, loyalty, and his role as a diplomat, a warrior, a crusader, I think make him a really intriguing and an astonishing character. I can't begin to do him justice in this small space, but for anyone who finds him intriguing, there is a biography called The Greatest Knight by Thomas Asbridge, where you can read much more. But I hope you agree that he's certainly a worthy contender for our Westman of the day. And I look forward to hearing some thoughts. Let me come to my great co-host, Mr. Hans de Skipper.
I'm going to to forge ahead because I switched to iPhone and now it seems to fail me. So let's see how far I get. Yes, this man must have been a freak of nature, because I mean 500 combat, let's call it combat sport engagements, and he won them. There is nothing comparable today. So this is not a man that you want to face in any kind of competition. I think they are just there are some people who are just next level genetically, and you get these freaks, and they are just not, you know, they tower above the rest, and everyone knows that this is a champion. I think, in fact, this is probably where the word champion comes from, is from these people. Now, as you told his tale, I was reminded about the one that probably most of us know, and that's the tale of Don Quixote, which is a total satire. It's the Don Quixote character is an idiot. He's his servant is Sancho Panza, is a smart one. And I was wondering whether you know, today we would recognize that as the anti-white narrative, but I don't know, you know, it's hard to cast your mind back to that, to the culture of that time. But of course, anti-whites today love that story, because so I think there is anti-white narrative, even if the author didn't mean it like that. But today, anti-whites love that story of how the medieval knight is depicted as this idiot that's a danger to himself, and his servant has to save him the whole time.
That's a really, you know, I hadn't thought of that in my preparations for this at all, and that's a really interesting sort of point that you raise. And certainly, yeah, there's a lot of motivation. It's just another example, I think, of people riddled with anti-white envy and jealousy, looking to undermine our history, looking to undermine the roots of our people, the masculinity, and white men. So I think that's a good observation. Arden Pardy.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I believe, and I'm hunting the link right now, I believe it was Bo Dade, the history bro from Lotus Eaters, had done a profile on William Marshall that that was very in depth and very interesting. So that might be further reading for you guys.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, I would love to. I don't know if is it a podcast or is it a video, but I would love to see it. Yeah, I think he's a truly wonderful character. I had 3 different people in mind who I kind of came to mind from history for me as men that really symbolized fealty and devotion to the kings or the lords that they served. But in the end, for me, he was he was the champion. He was the winner, and I think as well, you know, that it's something worth consideration that these types of characters were the celebrities of their time in a way. This is who the young boys would have grown up idolizing and looking up to and wanting to be like, and we compare that now to the figures on offer for many of our young boys. It's there's just no comparison. By a spirit.
Sorry, I don't mean to cut in too much. I was actually wrong. I found the link. It's Dan Davis History. I'll put it in the response thread.
Oh yeah, I'm familiar with him. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'll definitely check that out. Thank you very much. By a spirit, come on in.
Yeah, I was just looking at the end of the biography on Wikipedia, and I was interested to see that that beautiful statue of him on the horseback was only unveiled in 2022. It's a relatively new statue, and it shows that our people can still make beautiful art. I was really heartened to see that, because when I first looked at it, I thought, oh, that has to be from hundreds and hundreds of years ago, because nobody makes anything like that anymore. But that is only 3 years old. And I think that that is excellent that our people are still making beautiful things like that. And the other thing I wanted to say is I have never heard of William Marshall before, and I feel so embarrassed that I have no idea who he is. I've never heard of him, and he's such a remarkable person. So thank you for sharing this with me. And we do not get the English heritage here in America as far as the way that you guys do over there. And so this is a beautiful story of one of our champions. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Biospirit. That's lovely to hear, and I couldn't agree more about the statue. It really is stunning, and it's in Pembrokeshire. That obviously, as I mentioned, he became the first Earl of Pembroke, and I think it's a lovely tribute. But I will say that we don't get it here either. We don't get that history here either. I made a small reference to the heraldry on his shirt, and this coat of arms. So that period of the sort of late 12th century is when heraldry was becoming formalized among European nobility, and of course everything had meaning. So the green here would relate to hope and loyalty and love, a connection to your land. And he married a woman called Isabel de Clare, who was a very wealthy heiress, and she owned large estates and a lot of land. So that they had a lot of land. The gold is associated with generosity and wisdom, and of course, high status in the society. And the red rampant lion is the warrior spirit, and also the blood and the sacrifice of his life as knighthood. So all of these things have deep meaning, and it always strikes me when you see a royal event, something large, that's kind of broadcast around the world from the UK. There is so much symbolism, there is so much ritual and ceremonial things going on, and most people these days haven't got a clue what any of it means, myself included. I a lot of it I simply don't know, and I have to find out or try to listen to commentary, and I personally think, wow, of course there's a place for world history, but when I think of how much history of other countries I studied, I would much rather have known about our own people and our own past and history. Oh, I think Julia must have dropped. She had her hand up. Hopefully she'll reconnect. Okay, well, yeah, I mean, I basically, so as I said, part of the reason that I had this in mind. Oh, Hans, go ahead.
I'm just thinking now, he was born 80 years after the Battle of Hastings. And at the Battle of Hastings, the battle was essentially Harold, the son of Godfrey, with his Viking shield wall against William with his Norman cavalry. And I wondered, because the Norman cavalry won, and would it have damaged the knight, the status of the knight, if from then on the Viking shield bearer would be the dominant, and maybe the whole chivalric history would look different.
You're very provocative today, Hans. Yeah, I suppose it would have had an impact for certain. I don't know to what extent. I can't answer that. But obviously, the Knights were well established all around Europe. These things were going on. So, but of course, it would have had a change. And I get a little bit excited about the Battle of Hastings because I spent a lot of my childhood on the south coast, and I'm very familiar with the area, Hastings and Battle itself, and all of that area of the coast. So I always get a little bit giddy when that comes up. Let me see. Did Julia manage to reconnect? No. Oh, hopefully she will. Yeah. So as I said earlier at the beginning, this had kind of been on my mind a lot due to various things that we've discussed in spaces, various posts that I've seen, and comments that have been made. And I was thinking about the mindsets and activities of our boys that are increasingly directed towards things that have traditionally been more feminine. And when we combine that with the white erasure of our norms, the injection of feminism into our society, into our schools, the emasculation of the white male, something else that came to mind, some of you may have seen it, I've posted it several times, actually. I've posted it in different contexts. The video of a young German boy who is ritually humiliated in the school setting. He is sat down, a young white boy, he is sat down in front of his class and made to apologize to a black teacher for the slave trade and other wrongs that his ancestors have supposedly committed. And it was one of the most despicable, disgusting videos that I've seen. I really don't have words for the absolute rage I felt at what was done to that little boy. And sadly, that's happening more and more to white children across our countries. And it's unconscionable. It's absolutely, there's no defense for it. But it did kind of hit me that young boy is so used to sitting down and keeping his mouth shut. There was no masculine defense. There was no, well, hang on a minute. There was no questioning, well, why should I do that? Or there was nothing. He just accepted and went along with it. And so, again, this has been really on my mind a lot, certainly as a mother of boys. That where is the sort of combat and the strength? These things have all been vilified. And as I said before, our boys especially are growing up without these role models, without that masculine ideal to look up to. And they're basically being treated as if they're girls a lot of the time, certainly in the school setting. And I also wanted to add in that I'm not in any way advocating for, men or boys to sort of suffer in silence and not discuss their feelings or things like that. And it would also be remiss of me, while I have the opportunity, I would also like to mention and just honor Ricky Hatton, the English boxer who died. I didn't see the news of this until this morning. Otherwise, I would certainly have mentioned it yesterday. But I thought it was very, very tragic to find out that he's been found dead in his home. And of course, he had a long battle with alcohol and depression. So I think that it's very important to be aware of men's mental health and so on. But I also am very concerned about the way men and boys are being raised and being treated within our modern Western societies, and what type of men they become and what relationship they then have to other men. Which kind of brings me back to this idea of fealty. And not every man can be a leader. I mean, certainly a leader of his own life and of his home, I believe, is essential. But not every man is going to be a great leader of people, or in an international sense, or anything like that. And so the men who take those positions of leadership, they need men who they can trust, who they can rely on. There needs to be that relationship of fealty, of duty, of honor. And I think that that's something that's been really annihilated in our society, to the point that when we see leadership, people don't recognize it. And that brings me to something again I mentioned earlier, is sometimes we get these snarky comments about, well, Jason praises himself, or it's like a cult because you all praise Jason. And it really strikes me every time I hear that and I think on it, I find myself coming to the same conclusion, that masculine leadership has become so lost that people no longer know how to process it when they see it, and they don't know how to react to it. So that's kind of something that had been on my mind. I would love to hear some of the men's thoughts, particularly on that. Hans, anything?
So, for instance, my son, he looks at me and then he looks at Andrew Tate, a brown man in a Bugatti, and then we are wired like that. We are wired to recognize success, but society is so, because of anti-whiteism, it's not an even playing field. So the degenerates, the non-whites, the anti-whites, they all get a leg up, and this creates this inverted view of virtue and of success, and we have to compete with that. It's an uneven competition, and I just don't have easy answers for that. Our children and our young adults, they cannot help but notice, who the successful people are and what they are doing. You look at the YouTubers, most of them, they are so feminized. These big young white male YouTube creators, they have all these kind of what's that singer? Those kind of hairstyles. It's I don't have an answer for that. Please help me.
Excuse me. I mean, I think you've hit the nail on the head, and I'll pass this round for the other men to see if they can contribute something of an answer to that. But my take is that it starts early. It starts really early. I mean, if our boys are in mainstream school, in public school, then for a lot of us, depending where people live, but for a lot of us, they are going to be exposed to non-white norms and non-white behavior. And that is very much angelized and glorified. And they are 100% going to be exposed to anti-whiteism within the school setting and curriculum. And for a lot of them, as I said, there's going to be a sort of feminization process where they are treated as if they are the same as girls. And their bodies aren't being put through, that process of rough play and working their muscles and, getting absolutely exhausted from running around. And they're sitting and getting restless and fidgeting. And, we kind of spoke about this, not Sunday just gone, the one before, when we were discussing education. So I think a lot of it really starts there. But I personally believe strongly that, we really need to be giving our boys a different set of values, because if we leave it to the school system, if we leave it to, what they're going to be exposed to from the television, the internet, social media, so on, as you say, what's glorified are absolute degenerates. And I don't know what the answer is once that's already taken hold. I suppose that's why I wanted to discuss this subject, because I think it's something really vital moving forward for people who have got young children, where we can still perhaps, get in there and say, what are your children looking up to? Are we, what type of men are we raising for our people and our future? I know with my children, I see them with their father, and he'll say to them, "I am the best," and there's no reservation in his mind about that. But we operate on that basis as a family, that he is the leader. He is the leader of the family. He is the leader of the home. And I mean, I have pretty much free reign to run my household, my kitchen and my home as I see fit. But I have earned that trust. I've earned that trust by showing my capacity as a woman to run my home, to raise my children, to manage my finances, and so on. So I've earned that trust from him. But I also recognize that if he walks in the door and says, "Pack a bag," I'm not arguing or asking why. I'm grabbing a bag and packing it. And I think that those type of norms have been obliterated. So I think that there's a lot of work to do in redressing what or how we define success and how we define a good person. Because I see way too many young people looking at absolute bums, absolute losers, people who have embarrassed themselves on reality television, and now the sort of celebrities that young people are looking up to. I mean, it's really disturbing. I think it's very tragic. By your spirit.
Yeah, so I'm going to play devil's advocate here. So I hear what you're saying, and I think that these are all good points. However, as Jason pointed out yesterday on the show, the Utah shooter was raised in basically a perfect family. So we have an extremely conservative, Republican voting, praying before dinner at the table, Christian family. The parents were model parents. He was, I don't know that you could, I mean, where are you going to point that he wasn't given a good masculine role model as a father? And he still turned out the way that he did. And the trans partner, the same thing. Apparently came from a model home in Utah, and we're seeing this more and more with people who are raised in just what we would consider to be the perfect situation of a household, and they are turning out to be absolute anti-white monsters. So is the problem that they're not masculine enough, or is the problem anti-whiteism? And I'm gonna side with that it's anti-whiteism that is poisoning our children. And it doesn't matter how many role models you're going to put in front of them, or how much you're going to take them to church, or how much you're going to try to make them into a model person. If they get exposed to anti-whiteism and they don't know how to counter it, if you don't inoculate your children to it, it's not going to make any difference. And that's just the point I want to bring out with this. And I will also say that for myself, I grew up in a similar household. My father was a police officer. My mother was a stay-at-home mom. I had an excellent upbringing, and I still turned out anti-white. So I have to counter that this is going to be like some kind of fix for what's wrong with our people. The sickness is the anti-whiteism, and you can have a boy growing up that's kind of effeminate, or you can have a boy that's growing up who's very masculine, and both of them have a almost 95% chance of turning out anti-white these days. So that's my 2 cents worth on this.
Yeah, I agree with most of what you've said. I do take some exception with this idea that these families are model parents, and I keep hearing that phrase. And for me, I question that, because the idea that if somebody votes a certain way, they attend church, that makes them model parents. Um, I don't think it's a leap to say, well, that those things don't really necessarily equate. And there are certainly a lot of people who are raised with strict religious parents who then go off the rails. So I am always a little skeptical, I suppose, when I hear people say, oh, well, he came from a model home. We simply don't know that, or I certainly don't. I haven't seen anything other than, reports that he was raised in a church going family, so on. But to me, that doesn't that doesn't signify that. Sorry, can't speak today. That doesn't signify that they're necessarily a model family to me. And in terms of the anti-whiteism, I'm not suggesting that having these role models is a solution to anti-whiteism as a whole. Absolutely not. I'm trying to make a point and just focus specifically on this idea of leadership and fealty, and the erosion of that relationship and the erosion of that norm. And I think that that's something that we can see very much, and I was trying to tie that. So I was saying, in the school, if you have your children in public school, they're absolutely being exposed to the feminization, they're absolutely being exposed to anti-whiteism. So it's not my intention to say, if a person has masculine leadership, they are immune to anti-whiteism. So I just wanted to be clear about that. Hans?
I mostly agree with what Biospirit says, because anti-whiteism is sort of it's sort of it's a firewall, and if you don't have the firewall, you're going to burn down. But having the firewall is not going to mean that you have a good role model for a father. So things can still go wrong, but you need that firewall. Now, just a personal anecdote, because in school I did encounter anti-whiteism, and I didn't recognize it at the time, but I know why it didn't affect me. My father, we would walk in the veld, we would hunt birds and things like that, and he would tell me these great stories about our people, and many of the stories, it centered on the fact that success and wealth, um, and is independent of character. That character comes from inside, and you can be a wealthy person without character, because you know you are not honest, you are clever about not being honest and not being caught out, and you can bend the rules, and you can become successful and wealthy. But a person that is sometimes comparatively poor can have strong character, in terms of that person can make decisions that will harm his own self-interest for his principles. And I remember distinctly, in school, where wealthy students would slander my history and my people, and I would think, we're not like you. You are so beneath me. I despise you. And that was an armor that it had just no effect on me, because I had the confidence that my people were, um, were the gold standard, and we don't have to. We may be poor, but we don't stand back for anything. So that's just a personal anecdote, because, of course, the anti-whiteism wasn't like it is today, but it is something that I think the father has to spend the time. I think what happened in those households is, at 14 years of age, this child is on Reddit. This is totally unacceptable. Um, you must keep that reins tight. Until your child is through puberty, you must keep control over what goes into his eyes.
Yeah, I mean, as a parent, I certainly agree with that sentiment. I think that it's really worrying how many young children are left unsupervised with devices, with phones, with tablet, and they're on various apps. And I'll see if I can post it actually, but Ardent Party had a great post the other day about Roblox and some of the things that children are being exposed to on there that Roblox could put limitations on, and they're not, because they're invested in the profit that they make. But I think it really is frightening, and I think that the world has changed so fast in terms of technology, but there is an ocean that's kind of seems to be ever expanding between parents' real connection and understanding what's going on in a lot of their children's day-to-day lives and what they're doing on technology. So I would certainly agree with that. Julia, welcome back.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, I had to get my food. Um, I wanted to thank you as well for uh, telling us all about William Marshall, because I also had not heard of him, and I uh, am a big fan of the medieval period. When I was studying English literature, I one of my favorite English class that I took by far was one on medieval literature, which is mostly romance, actually, because that was the height. That's basically what the literature of the period was. Um, and it's so beautiful. The stories are amazing, and it was also, thinking back, one of the most white positive courses by far, probably the most white positive class that I took at Stanford. So good on them for that. Uh, and the teacher was a woman, which is common for the humanities, uh, and a white woman too. But she was very, she thought very highly of white men. I'll put it that way. And it was really nice to see. One of the things I've always been obsessed with when it comes to writing essays is gender. Like, I've just always been fascinated by the interplay between the sexes, and so there was just such a wealth of topics to discuss there with regards to all the symbolism and everything. Anyway, I won't go on to too much of a ramble, but yeah, I've just always loved the medieval period, and but I don't know the history nearly as well as I should. And Biospirit is so correct when he says that Americans are not taught English history, and I feel like it's this weird, like, American rebellionism type thing. Like, we fought to be free of you, so we're not going to teach your history type of thing. Um, which to me seems very silly, because obviously, America was founded mostly by Anglo's, and I'm half Anglo myself, and but it's true. Most of what I know about um, like British culture, I know because my mother is Australian, and and a lot of that culture still is maintained in Australia. Um, it's not because of I definitely didn't learn it in the American school system or anything like that. So that's interesting. Oh, I also wanted to say regarding Tyler. I think I said the same thing yesterday, where I don't think we can claim to know what his family is like just because the father votes Republican and goes to church, or even if they pray every night. Like, we don't know the inner workings of his family life, and yeah, like it made me think of Ayala, if anyone knows who that is, Ayala girl, here on Twitter, who is essentially a prostitute and very open about it. And she's the daughter of a preacher or minister or some sort of religious leader. And she came from a very conservative household. And now she's, a prostitute in her, I don't know, I think at least mid 30s, and single and can't find a husband and is selling her eggs. And well, it's very, very sad. And she's a very intelligent and attractive woman. And it's just a waste, right? So, yeah, you just sometimes people grow up in those conservative homes. It can go the opposite. They can rebel really hard, and we just don't know what's going on.
Oh, thank you, Julia. I'm very delighted that you have a feeling for the Westman of the day. And I'm not sure if you cut out before I said it, but unfortunately we really don't get as much of that history taught to us even here in England either, as I would like to see, and increasingly less so. I do think that there's something valuable to consider in this concept of a king and his earls, or a lord and his men. And that's not to say that I think that we should go back to those ways necessarily, but I think that there is something there in us and in our history, that's something of our people, and with the erosion of that, something perhaps in it has been lost that has massively weakened our societies. That's my thought on that. Hans, I'll come to you in 1 second. I just wanted to address, because there's several comments regarding tech issues, and unfortunately some people are cutting in and out. They're not hearing everything. I'm afraid it is just one of those nights with X. I myself was booted out of the space and just managed to reconnect in time at the beginning. So unfortunately, there's nothing I can do. You may have to leave and then come back in, and it may resolve the issue. And I also just wanted to mention a comment from Jerome about, let me just pull it up. I've lost it. There we go. Oh, no, not that one. Oh, that's strange. It seems to have disappeared. Ah, here we go. X had hidden it. So Jerome left a comment saying Charlie Kirk's murderer's family was not healthy, according to an analysis that he watched last night. The podcaster was raised by a cluster B mum and showed reasons to think the murderer's mum was far from ideal. He's put a link for the YouTube episode if people want to see it. So that's in the comments. Thank you for that, Jerome. Hans, go ahead.
I think it would not be preposterous to today to propose as a metric of degeneracy the degrees of separation to the furry. Now, imagine going back in time and explain that to William Marshall.
Yeah, it's really unthinkable, isn't it? It's I don't have words. I don't have an answer for that right now. I'm struggling to not laugh. One other thing, I just wanted to respond to Julia, to something that you said, about this woman. I'm not familiar with the account, but I mean, it sounds absolutely tragic. And from my perspective, a lot of that is to do with the other side of this coin, which is perhaps another space, but the other side of this coin is that whilst I'm discussing the issues of masculine leadership and how our boys are being raised and how they're being affected, of course, that has a direct impact on how young girls are being raised and what they're being taught. And we see this real kind of twisted irony of our boys being told to sit still and not fidget, and all of their strength and all of their valor and any kind of sort of fighting spirit is immediately vilified, whilst girls are being told, get out there and be strong and be a boss and all of it. It's so twisted and upside down and back to front and perverse that I find it beyond belief. But it's really sad when you see women's lives ending up like that. And the majority, in my experience, of women who end up like that haven't had a positive male, a positive relationship with male leadership. They haven't had good relationships with their fathers. They haven't had a man in their life to kind of lead and keep them grounded. I think Blue Flame maybe had his hand up first.
Is it working?
It's working. Go ahead.
Perfect. Yeah, guys, I was just listening in, and I might have missed a point here or there. So if I repeat something or I address something that already has been spoken about, I guess, tell me to stop. But there is something that is on my mind when it comes to raising children, and because we're speaking about, you need to raise boys to be masculine, and all of that. I think before that, and I, or how shall one put it? Here is something that goes hand in hand with that. Is that learning to know your child, learning your child to think for itself, because you can address like Christianity was brought up here, but it is actually it accounts for any sort of religion or any sort of politics or like a certain system in which you want to integrate them in a way, having them grow up in with certain behaviors that are supposed to help them integrate into society. So let's, for example, say, with prayer. Someone said something about prayer. Okay, so you have a community. Let's say they're all Christians, and it is somewhat expected that everyone prays before they eat something, or they go to church every Sunday, or whatever it's going to be. Okay, fine, but that is somewhat more like the practical purpose of that is social cohesion, right? You haven't even like addressing this is actually it actually misses the point a tiny bit. And what do I mean by that? Before all of that, you should get to know your child for real. What are the interests of your child? What are the talents that your child has? And you can detect this from like when they're from the moment they start walking. You can see this if you have an eye for it. But people, so many people, they have children and they raise them by the expectancy of society, and they completely forget to look at the child and say, it's like, is this actually something that he or she is meant to pursue? And let's say young boy, and you can tell that if he sees a piece of machinery, he just has to get his hands on it. If you give him like a pencil or whatever, so I couldn't be less interested, something like that. But you want them to learn to write, right? Within this example, that is fine. Even if he doesn't like it, again, that is understandable. But the true life pursuit for this child seems to be like probably a course in mechanics or whatever it's going to be, right? That is something that exploration is something that unfolds with the years. That is something that is simply barely done at all. And you can say then you give someone the so-called perfect childhood. The perfect childhood is where a child is completely and utterly developed into the person that, let's say, the biospirit wants them to be, not someone who is integrated into society. Even what if your child is meant to be a rebel? And I'm saying this, I say that to be a little bit confronting, but it's really important. Your child may actually have like 10% or 20% of who this child is meant to be is to go a little bit against the grain of society, because that keeps the conversation going. That is culture pushing. That is healthy. If you have a religious family, it doesn't need to be Christianity, uh, who like just crushes the child, says you need to pray, you need to go to church, you need to dress like this because the neighbors want it so. Yeah, big surprise that the child is going to be resentful of that. Big fucking surprise. Of course they're gonna tell you F you mom, F you dad, and they would be right to do so, because you have violated them in a certain way. You have violated their soul, their growth. That that is as unhealthy as it gets. And I see it already happening now. Okay, so Mr. Kirk, very Christian, and now the entirety of society who rightfully stands by that it is not done, that someone celebrates his death. Now they suddenly have all an interest in the church or whatever, to out of empathy or whatever. It's like the shock of it all. But again, is you're creating, what this creates is a group uniformity that may just be the next form of tyranny. Like today, we live in the anti-white tyranny of today, but that anti-white tyranny came out of a previous mindset, which uh, which got a lot of our people at the time to be resentful of something. There was something culturally that was unhealthy for us. Now I'm not gonna pretend that I know what it was, but I think I understand man's psyche enough to say is that if you raise a child in a certain way that is harmful to the child, or even if it is unintentionally so. I'm not even saying that this is about torture either. It's like sometimes people are just unwitting about that. Is that if this happens on a big enough scale, it's like, oh, we're just raising them as society wants it. We're not raising them as they're actually meant to be. Yeah, then they're going to create hippie communes, I guess, like in the 60s or whatever. That was the response back then. And that doesn't mean that the response is healthy, but it can be understood as it's a fu to the parents or the grandparents who didn't, who oversaw something important and maybe insisted that it was overseen. Um, so yeah, I mean, like, if we start going into this, we can sit here until next week, and we still wouldn't have figured it all out or addressed everything. But point being is that if you want the child to be healthy, and if you want a boy to be masculine, and I'll add something for the girls too, actually, and that in a moment. You need to look at who they actually are, who they're meant to be, and that is difficult. But hey, it's parenting, right? It's not meant to be easy. And the end result of your child being a complete man in this regard, in regards to boys, a complete man who is rooted in himself, who has an that comes with integrity, that comes with a lot of good virtues, and then let him go along or against society as much as maybe is needed, which can manifest in a healthy way too. There is that culture pushing that's always going to have to be there. um I think that is something that is often very much overlooked, and institutionalizing someone or whatever is not the answer, even if it is with the best of intentions. um yeah, and as for girls, this is maybe a bit of this is something that the anti-whites have poisoned, of course, but a lot of girls also need a degree of masculinization. Now, that doesn't mean that they have to pretend to be men. That is not what that is about at all. Another term for this is also solarization. Solarization, it basically comes down to the daughter becomes her own self, separates oneself from the parent, like it's no longer the baby parent relationship anymore. It gradually evolves into, I am my own person, and I have my own desires, dreams, what have you. That doesn't mean that they need to be uh, antagonizing towards the parents at all. No, this is again just naturally nature sets you on this planet, and at some point in time, because your parents are not ever not always going to be around to hold your hand or whatever's going to be, you need a degree of independence. That is also a form of masculinization, and it's more psychological again than it is physical, of course. Anti-whites will, of course, go in there and says like, yeah, actually, you want to be a dude, or whatever it's going to be, which is despicable. It is torture. That is torture. That is psychological warfare. But in a healthy setting, again, it's like, they call it a tomboy or whatever it's going to be, but basically I'm speaking about women who are happy, who have healthy relationships with their parents, but they're not this, they aren't stuck to the parents anymore, contrary to a lot of people today. Look at so many of these white anti-whites. When you ask him, hey, how's dad? Yeah. Or how is mom? How is your relationship with mom? Man, you're gonna see bitterness. You're gonna get, actually, a lot of them absolutely turn completely silent when you do that. You know why? Because when you ask them that, you summoned in their heads all the misery that they had to grow up with. And the lashing out there, yeah, the towards society is a big, is a lot of the reasons why they're white anti-whites too. But they're in a certain sense, they're still tied to the parents. It's because the anger or the silences or whatever, it's still in their heads. They haven't freed themselves from that. They haven't they haven't become independent. That's also why anti-whites always move in crowds. Or when they are by themselves and they start yapping about something, it's always in reference to the crowd. So again, an institutionalization there. These people are also not who they were meant to be. That has been denied them. And the cure is absolutely the opposite of that. Because also when you teach your child to stand on his or her own feet, then whatever whatever types out there that want to control people, the only thing that they will receive from these sorts of individuals is a middle finger in the face. Rightfully so. I mean, that is what you do to cure society of this endless mess. And maybe a real quick addition to that is, like, what I'm now a little bit concerned about, and maybe have been for a long time, I do not want to see this left-wing anti-white tyranny exchanged for a right-wing anti-white tyranny. I do not need some, I don't know, and I think most of you will agree with that. I hope everyone. It's like, do you really want these psychopaths that are trying to run our lives today? Do you really want to see them exchanged for simply another set of psychopaths? Oh, but they're wearing a Christian cross, or they're Republican, so then it's okay. No, it's not. Absolutely not. That's not how we're meant to live. And you also see is that there is a circle, just a cycle of trauma that just keeps going on, and it's time for people to to go free, to break out of that mold, to have the maturity to say, it's like, the pain stops here, the pain stops with our generation. And yeah, that's what I have to say on that for now. Like, there's a bit of a crack in the dam, but if yeah, I see that others want to speak, so I'll leave it here for now.
Yeah, and there's some good stuff in there. I think there's certainly a lot of value in leaving children alone a lot, at least until they're getting to sort of the 7 or 8 mark. Obviously teaching them the basic skills of language and growing up and what have you. But in terms of molding them, I think that there is too much pressure on molding children, and I think that's increasing dramatically in the school system now. The amount of work that is put on them, the pressure of how to think instead of sorry, excuse me, the pressure of what to think instead of how to think. I think that there's a lot in play that is really like psychological abuse on this generation that I didn't experience when I was that age. I think it's quite frightening what's being done to children in society. I certainly agree with the last point you made. Yeah, we don't just want one set of controlling psychopaths changed over for another. I certainly agree with that. And I think a lot of these sort of people that we're seeing with kind of extreme anti-white behaviors, a lot of them really haven't grown up. They haven't gone through that process of becoming an adult. And there isn't that respect for parents because they haven't gone through that process of growing up. They are children in adults' bodies. And you see that when you see them screaming and the tantrums and so on. So for me, that there's a definite link there. But I also think that there's a lot of value in, especially again for the boys, in them having much more physicality. School doesn't provide that. So I do think our young lads need to be having physical skills. They need to be training. They need discipline, martial arts, things like that. I think are excellent for the young boys. Julia?
Yeah, I agree with what you both said regarding our children, and especially, I think it's a big issue, not just that parents try to mold children um, so that society will accept them, and schools as well, of course, but parents wanting to mold their children to be like them, and parents then wanting to live vicariously through their children. This is something I experienced personally, um, from my mother, and it was not good. Um, so yeah, um, that can backfire quite badly, and I wonder if that's what is often happening in these cases of rebellion, that the parents want the children to be just like they are in terms of their strict religious beliefs, or whatever it is. Um, and then I was also thinking about what Stefan Molyneux was saying initially. I think it was a few days ago now already, maybe like 2 days ago, about Tyler being on SSRIs, and he was commenting on like the look in his eyes and the way that he sounded when he was reading his acceptance letter to college. And I agree that there's something in the eyes. You can tell so much about someone just from the way they look, even in a still photo. And in all of the photos that I've seen, he does have there's something about the eyes. He doesn't have the fully dead look in his eyes that I see in so many people these days, that it's just scary. Like, so they're just so, I mean, I don't know, maybe like 70% of people, especially young people I see, have this just like completely dead look in their eyes. It's really tragic. Um, he doesn't have that, but he definitely has like there's something there. And so the hearing that the mother um might be type B, like that would really explain a lot. Maybe he has some mental issues himself, especially if he is on SSRIs. Um so yeah, I don't know what other people's take is on that, but I agree about the eyes. At least I see what Stefan means in that regard. And then I also wanted to touch on the monarchy and basically men's spaces. So I personally think monarchy is a great system and would love to go back to it. I think that's part of why it is so appealing, is because it is the right system for us. Um, but I think really what we've lost, or what our men have lost, is a sense of brotherhood, and having men's spaces in general where they can congregate and bond. Most men don't really have proper social circles anymore, let alone proper mentors and um, they don't get the opportunity to mentor others, and th- there's a whole wonderful system that we used to have um, that has been lost. Uh, and I think monarchy was a good way of sort of setting an example um, in that regard. And then the guild system also was very helpful for that. So we had a lot of good systems that are just have been eradicated. And men can't even like have their own clubs anymore. Like here in Germany, uh, there's like a boys hiking club, and but they made a law that no club can exclude women. And some uh, anti-white girl basically complained and made it so the club had to accept her, even though she wasn't interested in hiking. She just wanted to. Um, she's just unhappy that she couldn't be in their club, and yeah, I think that's really atrocious. It's just so spiteful, and um, yeah, I don't get it. Like, I think we've also, as women, lost our. Uh, we used to have like this segregation of the sexes, um, and I think that was good for women too, to have uh, stronger connections with our sisters and our mothers and all of our female in our lives. We've lost that too. So yeah.
Thank you, Julia. You know, it's interesting. I've seen a surprising amount of people coming forward and actually expressing that opinion that they like and would rather live under that system. And yeah, I've been surprised about the amount of people I've seen expressing that sentiment, if I'm honest. That's a whole other conversation, I think. Yeah, it's probably not one I can comment much on right now. But I will say, you know, the other post that I had put in the Jumbotron, it is a couple of minutes long video. And I wish I'd had the time to write down some of the things that the man said. Now, I will just preface this by saying that this man in particular is a fan of Tommy Robinson, and the video bleeps out Tommy Robinson's name. I think it was not allowed on TikTok or something. I'm not on TikTok, so I've no idea how that works. But I myself am not a fan of Tommy Robinson and his position. I think that he advocates for very anti-white outcomes. So the reason that I've put this video there is not because of the Tommy Robinson connection, but it's for the man himself. I thought he was exceptional, and I thought it was beautiful to see a man speak the way that he did. The couple of points that I can remember is that he's approached, you know, within a crowd, and he expresses to the person interviewing him or questioning him, and he says, you know, I'm an Englishman. Absolutely, I don't go out wearing a mask on my face because I have, you know, I have conviction in what I believe. I know that I am in a moral position, and the people here, the English people who are here representing, they know that they are also, they have the moral high ground. And I encourage people, if you know, if you feel attracted to the, you know, to the topic, then please do watch the video afterwards, because I'm doing an absolute pig's ear job of representing this man and the things that he said. But I think that it was a really special moment to hear a man speak the way that he did. And then the second part of the video, and this is why I brought it to the space today, is that he brings up again this subject of fealty. And he says, you know, that's something that used to mean something. That was the basis of our society. That's how we used to be. And this idea that, you know, someone gave their heart, they gave their life to their Lord, and they said, here, you know, do with me what you will, you know, work through me. It's a tremendous mindset. And I think that we don't have many examples of that in society. I do see that here in this community. I do see people who understand Jason's leadership and they take that and they use their time and their skills to produce, to manifest the results from his work. And I think that's, wonderful, beautiful. I know that for myself, one of the things that really caught my attention with Jason was that it wasn't just another voice with another view on how we should solve problems in the world, or just another talking head. I watched him for a period of time and realized, okay, there's a whole package here. What I'm seeing is someone who sets an example of masculine leadership. They talk to young men. He talks sometimes in his live streams to young men. He addresses the lack of masculine mindset, especially in terms of how they deal with women and relationships. And, for me, I thought, wow, that's something rare. That's something that we don't see every day in society. And so when I see the criticisms, as I said before, every time I ponder that or I contemplate it, I always come back to the same conclusion, that people are so lost in terms of actual leadership. We have all of these clowns running governments. We have, people who have large audiences, but they haven't earned those audiences organically. They've been sort of, set up with agents and this and that and the other. We have an absolute absence of true leadership. And so, yeah, I encourage people, have a look at the video. He's a really beautiful and impressive man in my estimation. And to me, it's only unfortunate perhaps that, he's landed and been duped into the workings of Mr. Robinson. But that's my view. Hans, over to you.
I remember watching that a while ago, and he speaks with conviction and he speaks with righteous anger. There is anger in underneath the way he makes eye contact. He looks into the eyes of his interlocutor. And this is why he doesn't get the pushback that anti-whites usually give you, because they see there's no give in this person. This person looks into my soul, and this person is going to eviscerate me. So you don't get the normal Swami, treatment that you get from people who take this soft academic approach. And this is what I think misleads someone like Stefan Molyneux. If you look at that Tyler character, I can bet you he doesn't make eye contact. If you look at that video, this is what is triggering your sense of there's something not right with the way he's interacting, because he's not making eye contact. This is a masculine thing, to make eye contact. And this is why online meetings are fundamentally emasculating, because until they fix this technology to maybe 3D glasses or something that we can make eye contact. But this is why you can't sell. You can't sell over a team meeting. You have to do it in person. Now, I want to go back to Stefan Molyneux, because he is coping hard, because his central dogma is that all evil comes from child abuse. And people like Tyler, people like Carmelo Anthony threatens his hypothesis, because these were people who had good lives. And Carmelo plunged a knife into the heart of a young man with no provocation, after being born with a golden spoon in his mouth. So no, Stefan doesn't. He's totally unaware of um, the subconscious mind. He recently did a review of that movie in Britain about the boy who where they white erased, or let's say, no, they put it was based on a true story, where a boy, a non-white boy, an anti-white boy, murdered another child, but they cast the character as a white boy. And listen to the comment that Stefan makes about the choice of changing the race of the villain. He says, that's fully expected. It almost has to be like that. So totally missing the anti-white narrative, the whole point of the movie. Totally missing the fact who cares so much about child abuse, how that is psychologically abusing and destroying our boys when every movie is like that. So he's totally blind to the subconscious mind and how that kills you. It literally kills people. Um, uh, Elon Musk's son is dead because of that. Let's say functionally dead. Um, so no, Stefan Molyneux needs to go free because he's close. He's close, but there's a. It's like he's living on a two-dimensional plane, and he's missing the whole third dimension. So he's never going to make sense of the universe. He's going to make huge mistakes like this. It's SSRIs. No, it's anti-whiteism. Those eyes don't make contact because that's not a man. But this is it's derailing me because what I wanted to do was go back to the time of this man William Marshall and talk about Western civilization and how Western civilization changed a lot over the last 3,000 years. It changed a lot. Life of the normal person changed a lot. But if you think about how it changed, was as we went along over time, we encoded more and more of our instinct into our norms, into our laws, our customs. And the most basic instincts got encoded first. So if you think of the time of William Marshall and how we treated women, now in the anti-white narrative, women were enslaved. But in that time, if a woman was raped, heads would roll. So that's a very basic, a very at the bedrock of our biospirit is the way we organize the family and the way we treat women, which is a very important part of Western civilization because they are the bottleneck to the continuation of our people. Now, fast forward to today, and remember what in that time, a woman could use her good behavior as a shield, the same way the knight uses his shield to protect his body. Now we fast forward to today, and there's Irina. She is on her best behavior. She dresses not provocatively. She tries to be invisible. She doesn't give offense. She tries to not be beautiful and instigate or incite anti-white envy, goes quietly, and sit, and then she gets murdered. And this is the thing, I think. A lot of white women who identify as liberal, it left them with no escape because there's always an escape. Oh no, she was dressed provocatively. Oh no, she made a lot of noise. But this time there was no escape. So there's no way they can go. And if you think about it, this is the strategy of Go Free. We leave white people with no escape. You are targeted before you were even born. This is what reparations mean. It means those babies who are still in the womb, someday, reparations already target them because it's never going to stop. And I think this is what was so powerful about that video, is this thing that the audience gets no escape. And if you think about Greek tragedy is these horrible stories of the protagonist always dies, and he dies in horrible ways. But there's always a character flaw, because you have to give the audience an escape. Otherwise, the audience will identify with the victim, and they won't be able to distance themselves. And Irina's murder was not a Greek tragedy because there is no escape. And I think this is a lot of what's behind this incredible reaction that we're seeing, unprecedented reaction. So yes, good behavior is no longer a shield for bad things happening to you, thanks to anti-whites who turned our civilization into a hunting ground.
Yeah, well said, Hans. I'm going to just read in a comment that Benjamin left, and then I'll go to Biospirit, and then I actually want to come to Irina. So I'm going to come back to that topic in a second. But thank you, Benjamin, for the comment he left, that as a young boy in the 1980s, my movie heroes were Conan, Rambo, and such. Other than that, I remember a strong anti-white feminist push in the society all around, aiming to, in quotation marks, fix boys and men, as if all masculine traits were inherently wrong. I know it affected and weakened me. And I think that's very relatable. I also will just say quickly as well, going back to Julia, yeah, I see very much the same thing here with the erosion of spaces. When you look at those clips from the UK less than 100 years ago, you see the videos of the men with their sons, and all of the men in the community coming together. They're all still well dressed, they're nice, they're respectably presented, and they're off to the football. There's no women. The same in the public houses, going out drinking. That was a space for men. Men had men's clubs, and the same thing has happened here. All of those spaces have been invaded by women demanding access to them. So yeah, that was very relatable too, this complete erosion of spaces for men to do whatever they need to do, to talk amongst each other, to bond with other men, to fight, to do whatever men need to do, away from the feminine presence. And I think that's a tremendous loss. So Biospirit.
Yeah, I'm gonna kind of take us back in time to what Blue Flame was talking about a bit ago. So when I was growing up, there was a family who was friends of my parents, and they had 3 daughters, and one of the daughters was what at the time everyone called a tomboy, and the other 2 daughters were extremely feminine and just like regular little girls. And while everyone found the tomboy girl a little unusual, I mean, she wanted to have her hair short, she was very bossy, she wanted to play sports, she was just very, very very boyish. No one thought that anything needed to be done about it. It was just the way she was. And we have moved from a time of that people and children have a particular personality that they grow up with and express as they get older. We've now moved into this period of anti-whiteism where they have taken over what the meaning is of these different types of personalities, and they now tell these children that you are this, you are that, you're a tranny, maybe you want to be a furry, maybe you want to be this, or it's just absolute insanity, and the children take to it very readily because we do not give them any other identity for our white children. Our white children are raised not to have a racial identity. And if they look to have a racial identity, they only find that we are the evil ones in the anti-white narrative. So now we see in schools, like I was reading an article the other day that this one middle school in Maine has 40% of the kids who are identifying as furries and LGBTXYZ. 40% of the children. It's we can't survive that, and this is what we have to overcome. I don't know that it is necessarily a making everyone masculine who's a boy and making everyone hyper feminine who is a girl. It is the poisonousness of anti-whiteism that has gotten a hold of our children. And I just wanted to go back to that point because it wasn't an issue in the past. We had figures like Joan of Arc, and no one thought that was odd. That's just how she was. That's just who she was. So anyway, thanks for letting me speak.
Thank you, Biospirit. So I guess I'll wrap this particular topic up with something that hopefully will bring a little bit of a lightness and smile. I've added to the Jumbotron something that I have never seen, but I thought was striking and strangely beautiful in its own way. The Chevalier de la Nuit perfume bottle, designed by Julien Viard in 1923 to 24, molded clear and frosted glass with a patinated relief, and the stopper formed as a plumed knight's helmet. So I thought that was a nice way to just wrap up this section about William Marshall and male leadership. And as I said, I wanted to touch on something with Irina, but if anyone has any thoughts on the bottle, throw a hand up. Otherwise, I'll move on. Okie dokie. So give me a second, and I just want to add something else to the Jumbotron. Two things, in fact. Thank you to Tree Godfather, who posted this back up into the comments, and I'm adding it now to the Jumbotron. Just a reminder for anyone who hasn't seen it or hasn't had the time to check it out, to please go to the link and sign the petition for Irina. Thankfully, the petition has now started to get a little bit of traction, but I would encourage everyone to check out the link and support getting some justice for this beautiful young lady that was slaughtered. And that kind of brings me to the next thing that I wanted to discuss. I don't know if things are not loading in the Jumbotron for some reason. Here we go. I think they're coming through now. So if I say the name Irina, I think everybody knows who I would be referencing. But I wonder, and perhaps if you don't know, do nothing. But if you do know, perhaps if you could throw a thumbs up emoji. If I say the name Liana, how many of you have heard of Liana and know what her name refers to? So for those listening on other platforms, one person that I could see had a thumbs up. And so there's a picture of this young lady in the Jumbotron. Her name is Liana Kay. We don't know her surname in full. And I wanted to highlight her story because it's so very, very similar to Irina's. Liana was a 16-year-old girl who came to Germany as a refugee from Ukraine. Her home was destroyed. She moved there in 2022, and she was training to become a dental assistant. And one night she was on her way home where she started to be harassed by a migrant. And she called her grandfather to say that she didn't feel safe. She was scared. And the grandfather then, shortly afterwards, heard her scream. And that was the end of her life. A man from Iraq had been hassling her, and then he pushed her onto the train lines in front of an oncoming freight train. And I wanted to highlight this because whilst I think absolutely, correctly people have given a lot of attention to Irina Zarutska's story, I thought that this was every bit as devastating, every bit as horrifying, and hardly anyone has heard of this young girl. So it's a painful reminder, but I think an important one, that these hush crimes are going on every single day across our nations. And the contrast for me of Irina and how much everyone has heard of her compared to Liana just blew my mind. So I just wanted to mention Liana. I've shared her photo above. You can see just another very, very beautiful young girl of the West with her whole life ahead of her. And just another absolutely diabolical, senseless murder of one of our young women. Hans, any thoughts from you?
I'm just, we know that anti-whiteism is mostly driven by envy, and you can see why, because what they cannot have, they destroy, because that's their instinct. And but the other thing, rightly, that you point out, we wouldn't have known about Irina either. It only blew up when someone released the video. It was a complete hush crime, and apparently the anti-white media declined to report on it until the video was leaked.
That's my understanding. People have to do their own research, but that's my understanding, is that the video was given to mainstream media. They refused to broadcast it. They refused to cover the story, and an employee in one of the companies then leaked the video. Yeah, that's my understanding. Biospirit, over to you.
Yes, this is very similar to what Hans just said that I wanted to bring up, which is the reason that our people have been so energized by Irina and Charlie Kirk's murders is that they were basically done on live television. And so we see that when our people are irresistibly exposed to the horror that is happening to our people every day, that they do respond in a moral way. They do respond correctly with moral, righteous anger. And this is the reason why the media does hush crimes. This is why the majority of us here today had never heard of Liana is because the media knows that if we were exposed to what is actually going on and the horror that is happening on a daily basis to our people, that our people would put an end to it. So I wanted to thank you also for bringing her to our attention so that we know about her and that we can honor her. Thank you.
Thank you very much. New Hampshire Patriot.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for the mic again. You know, I need this to be a warning to all whites, not mainly females. You know, travel in twos, take care of each other, carry a firearm, move to a great state like I live in New Hampshire, where you can have a firearm, no problem as long as you're a legal gun owner. And never trust anybody that's around you. Always head on a swivel. I know guys in this room, guaranteed guys in this room, when I take my wife out, I scope out exit locations, fire locations, extinguishers, et cetera, et cetera. This is all part of white well-being because we're not just worried about ourselves, but we're worried about others. But especially when you're with your wives and your children out in the public, be extra vigilant. But women, when you're single, unfortunately, you're seen as targets. Unfortunately, I'm sorry that you have to live in this society, and that has to be what it is when you're around uncivilized people. I won't call them out of context because I'm going to be civil. Unfortunately, you can't just walk around the way you want to walk around. Unfortunately, you can't just dress the way you want to dress because then you're going to get groped, molested, not only in the physical sense, but in the psychological sense, talking. Just be extra vigilant for your people. And I stop.
Thank you very much for your comment. I mean, unfortunately, white people are not only in America, and you know, for many of us, it's simply not an option to move. I mean, I'm sure for many people within America as well, it's not an option to move to somewhere where they have, you know, firearm rights. Certainly for myself here in the UK, I mean, we don't have anything like that. We don't have a right to carry any defensive weapon. We don't have a right to even pepper spray. The best that we have is basically farb spray, which is that sort of red gel spray that marks the person and the scene, and may be able to link them to the scene, and may buy you a couple of seconds. So that's a very frustrating and difficult situation. I couldn't agree more in terms of the awareness. When you enter, if you have to take public transport, you know, making sure you know where there's an exit, making sure you're aware of who's around you. I think that is something that people have to start taking very seriously, and training again their children. We have to be making sure that our children have those type of preservation and security skills. So I have you have my full agreement on those points. And I would like to finish my response to your comment by just saying thank you, because myself, as a female, as a woman, I have massively changed my life as a result of the things going on. I don't go out after certain times. I don't go to certain places anymore. I don't go out alone anymore. I simply don't feel safe. I avoid even going to the city centre as much as humanly possible, because what I see when I get there is repugnant. So, you know, hearing men who have the decency to say, you know, we hate that you're living like this. we hate that you are experiencing this, and who show that anger and that concern. For me, at least, and perhaps other women feel it too. For me, at least, it's like a little breath. It's like being able to catch a breath, and I feel a moment in my heart of just some relief and some normality at being treated like a human being, and feeling the concern of people. So I personally thank you for that comment. You've got your hand back up, so I'll come back to you.
Yeah, no, I mainly want to express, like, I know we have people from different regions, and they don't have the same rights and freedoms that America has fought for, and the white man has fought for in this country. For some reason, England, the UK, other regions, they don't have. Uh, for some reason, they don't have the heart. Unfortunately, I'm going to say this, and you may or may not like it. This is why you lost, because America, the European conquerors, just had a bigger heart. I don't know what it is, but as far as the UK is, travel in packs, and I truly mean this. My wife, when we go out, she knows unequivocally, 100%, that she is safe, and she will, no matter what, make it home. And she knows that no matter what building we're in, everybody will be safe. Everybody. And I have extensive knowledge in several regions. I won't go over them, but I'm just saying that, the main thing is, especially for females, train. Train. Meaning, if you live in a region where you can't use firearms, and if you do use firearms, please train with your firearms. Nothing is worse than being caught in a situation. Put yourself in a high tense situation, to where I'm a top 100 shooter in the state of New Hampshire. Have been for 2 years in a row. I was sponsored by Glock. I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I'm just saying, just train, specifically train. And women, go to martial arts, any form of martial arts. And no common man knows martial arts. Not a single one, especially a migrant, an illegal invader coming from a sandbox that they train on monkey bars. You'll be able to toss them, man. And I'll land there.
Nothing wrong with tooting one's horn when one has earned the right to do so. Is all I'm going to say. So great stuff. Blue Flame, I think you were next.
Yeah, not sure if anyone remembers that when I was speaking about learning to go in formation, and that people would be, that for example, when you're with your children, that you teach them is like to handle these sorts of situations as effectively as possible. That there is a time to play and there's a time when it's absolutely serious, and that they do what they're told in that sense, for the sake of survival, of course. Um, I can also I can also perhaps mention a name. I'll mention the full name, and I wonder if anyone knows him. Tommy Lind. Can anyone tell that one who that is? Hmm. In 2020, a young Swedish man ran into some foreign uh, anti-white who had already been caught on drug trafficking, sexual assault, and like some other crime. I don't remember what it was. Um, the story is a bit twofold there. That apparently he got murdered by that anti-white, uh, trying to defend a teenage girl, and he himself was like 19 years old as well. So young man, I guess, in that sense. Others say that it was two separate occasions. That this a girl got raped by that monster, and that later on, at some point, the same night or within that same week, he was simply the next victim. But yeah, it's like I guess I just wanted to mention his name too. For whatever reason, it always stuck with me. And if we're going, mentioning one name, if I then yeah, of Leana, for example, then I'd like to mention at least one that I know as well. Just to yeah. Um, Also in regards to self-defense, I suppose there are there is something that has always surprised me, and that it is that even today, and I guess maybe sometimes you really can't escape it. Uh, but why are there still so many instances of wives getting picked off by themselves at this point? And I think that there are at least one or two meme pathogens involved with that as well. The first meme pathogen, and I've come across it in my life quite a lot, is the idea of, oh, it'll never happen to me. That happens to someone else. That would be one meme pathogen. I mean, it always happens to someone else until it happens to you, right? That's the reality. Um, and then there was another one, but for some reason it slipped my mind right now. So yeah, it never happens to me would be the one, and then the other one is oh yeah, of course. Yeah, but I don't hurt anyone. I'm a good guy. I'm a good girl. I don't hurt anyone. Why I need to worry about, right? These are mean pathogens. They absolutely are. And it is ridiculous that we still have people who, especially women, I suppose, who go go into areas that they should know are unsafe for them to go, and still they do so. Like, why are you there? What are you doing? It's like, I'm going to my job there or whatever. It's like, tough as it might be, it's like, is this really is a job worth risking your life for? I mean, what are you going to do with your paycheck when your life is ended? It's not going to go anywhere fast, is it now? Of course, maybe that is a bit of a simplification, because of course you need to live. But yeah, um I guess I wanted to mention these two yeah, these two thoughts that I have seen people talk about so often. It's like, well, it's not gonna be me, or whatever it's gonna be. It's like, no, I think there need to be curatives for that as well. So might be something worth thinking about too. Uh, as far as martial arts go or something for women, because you'll be able to toss some guy or whatever. Uh, if I might make a recommendation for women in regards to, let's say, being physically prepared, I would actually recommend maybe even just learning how to sprint proper. Just run away. Like, some people say, but that's silly. I mean, when you get caught or by the arm or whatever, it's like, can you run away then? Yeah, but look at it this way: if your legs are trained to sprint, your legs are in a certain sense also trained to really kick a knee very hard, right? So and for women also, I think rather than again, you do what you like, of course, but as rather than thinking about boxing or grappling or whatever it's going to be, um I would say maybe even like sort of like a sort of martial arts that focuses very much on leg power, because the legs are the most powerful muscles in the body. And even if you could say it's like, okay, man on average is always stronger, but yeah, a well placed kick, and if you have women who um, learn how to do it precisely, and how to be what is more natural for the female body is to be more I suppose bendy, more lean. That's a bit of a generalization, I know, but speaking in general in any ways, right? um yeah, if you master that in a way, I think that might be the best option, because upper physical body strength, fine, You know, if that is something that a woman wants to get better at, like, I'm not gonna stop it either, but focus on the stronger muscle groups of your body in the first place. And learn to be precise. You know, when it comes to actual being forced into a fight, other than that, you know, just learn how to sprint. Um, they might yell something at you or whatever, but being able to run away at a very rapid pace always beats you know, hunching over, panicking, and you know, getting grabbed, and yeah, then horror ensues, right? So that's what I wanted to throw in there. And I'll leave it here.
Yeah, thank you for honouring I didn't catch the surname, but Tommy, did you say, I think you said Lint, but I'm not 100% sure, but thank you for honouring him. I have to say I tend to agree, and I have some concern of women being sort of duped, or really duping themselves into the mindset that they can go to, you know, a few classes and get a little bit of an understanding of a certain form of martial art, and that they're going to be able to beat up men. And of course, society does everything it can to sort of promote that idea in women, which is, it's just ludicrous. And I do think that in the majority of cases, the smart move is to run like hell. That's not to say that I don't think it's good to have some skills. I mean, my children go to a kickboxing class, and there was a couple of young girls in the junior class, just phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal, really quite mind-blowing. I mean, there's one young girl, she's been training since she was, you know, 4 or 5. She's, I think, 15 now, and her speed and her strength are, you know, not that of an average girl of her age. Certainly she's in a better position than most girls her age, but still, and again, over here we have a serious problem with knife crime. So I do think, yeah, you know, going to some karate or whatever it may be, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think there is room for people to have a false sense of security from that. And yeah, I tend to agree. Learn to sprint. I think that's a good plan. Hans.
Um, so one day, I spoke before about one of my friends who got trapped in a white rice neighborhood with this beautiful house with wooden floors and everything. He inherited the house from his parents. He grew up in the house, but then as the neighborhood, you know, there's an optimal point to sell. Well, there isn't really an optimal point to sell when a neighborhood is getting white erased, because it's just going downhill. And he got trapped because his house, the value of his house went into the gutter because of the white erasure. And eventually he was the only white uh, person on his street. Um, so one day at work, I tell them, okay, when I visit my friend at night, I hold my hands at the bottom of the steering wheel so that I don't they don't see the white hands on top of the steering wheel and target me. And did my coworkers laugh and mock me for that? White coworkers. And I didn't think about it at the time, but afterwards, I remember that young woman who mocked me. She was the one who came and told us this horrible tale because my employer sent her off to this remote spot where she had to fill, she had to get petrol at the petrol station, and everything went well. And then she wanted to give the black who filled the car up a fee, which no one does, by the way. No one does that. But she wanted to do that out of white guilt, of course. But she didn't have, she only had a card. So now she wants to go and buy something so that she can get change at the shop, at the garage, and there were no white people there. It was all black, and they didn't want to serve her. And the black customers, they didn't intervene. They just pushed in front of her, and she was isolated. And all she wanted to do, she wanted money to pay to give this black that did his job a fee. And she mocks me for acting defensively in a neighborhood that's fully white erased. I mean, she had the experience of numerical courage when non-whites get numerical courage. But it was I just thought to myself at the time, well, just get killed then.
Yeah, I think that what you said really relates to something Blue Flame said as well about people putting themselves. Why are people still putting themselves sometimes in these positions? And listening to both of you, it reminds me of a video I saw some time ago of a young, maybe 20 something Irish young woman, and she's sitting in her car, and she's too afraid to get out of her car to go to her job, to go to the building that she's parked very nearby to, and she's too afraid to get out the car because there's a group of migrants and behaving in a way that she finds intimidating. And then she says that she goes through this most days, and it's getting more and more difficult to get to work on time because she's having to sit in the car until she feels safe to make a run to get into the building. And of course, I understand people have to work, people have their jobs, but there are certainly questions to be asked of, what can we do individually in our personal lives to look at where we're most in danger, when we're most in danger, and to try to work around them. Yeah, I think it's a really valid point. And with the woman that you're describing, it's just so sad. I just find it so very, very sad that, as you said, that white guilt that's present would make her. It's one thing if you want to tip someone or whatever, and you have some cash in your pocket, but to put yourself at risk to go into an environment that's going to be hostile in order to do that, there's something really wrong in our self-preservation instincts when we're overriding things that should be instinctual, to keep safe. It's really disturbing. New Hampshire Patriot.
Yes, ma'am. Thanks again for the mic. So I want to return back to the woman in North Carolina, the Ukrainian. So can anybody tell me what her number one mistake was? Anybody? I'll let somebody try and guess.
I was going to just butt in and say people throw up hands if they want to respond.
No, I would love to open this to a discussion because this is going to be a teaching moment. Does anybody know what her number one mistake was? We all know she was not clad out with revealing clothes, right? We all know that she was just doing her normal everyday to day activities, right? We all know she wanted to use public transportation. She got on the bus, right? What was her first mistake?
Well, Biospirit and Hans both have their hands up in response to you. So
I'd love to hear it.
okay, so let's go to Biospirit. I'll get your answer, then we'll get Hans's answer, and then we'll come back to New Hampshire Patriot.
Roger.
I would say it was that she did not pay attention to her surroundings.
Hans?
There were at least one white male on the in the vehicle, and she should have, even if she had to sit next to a strange white male, that's better than surrounding herself with non-white anti-whites.
Yeah, I'd agree with both of those answers that, she walks in, she doesn't survey the landscape, she just plonks herself down. My understanding is that there were a group of white people further down the carriage or in the next section. And then she's on her phone. And I certainly teach my children, you don't look at your phone. You don't have your phone out and be walking along, looking at your phone, sitting around looking at your phone. She's totally distracted.
That is the answer. What you just said, CKO. I agree with both Hans and Biospirit, 100%. But the first thing she did when she sat down around these people, now I get it. We as white people, we have a high trust society. We know that when we're around our fellow white people, we can be safe. But she walked into this bus, sat in an area where she was surrounded by non-whites, non-ethnic Americans, non-whites, and immediately looked on her phone without even listen. I haven't taken public transportation in 30 plus years. Yes, I'm old. I would never get on a phone. We didn't have the phones we have today, but whenever I got on a public transportation bus and I saw the people that were in the bus, I immediately was on alert. That is what we need to be teaching our children. I know it's sad. It is very sad. But we in order to ensure our prosperity and our future generations to be able to prosper, we need to teach them this. We are looked at as the enemy. And it's sad because all we do is what a moral, ethnic, ethic, ethnical person should do. We don't agree with all these taxes and all this, that, whatever, right? But we still just do what we have to do. We go through the motions. We take care of business. We raise our children. We have a wife and et cetera, et cetera. We just have this wholesomeness to us that a lot of people do not have. And this is what we need to take into consideration. And the short answer is what I meant to say is that she immediately looked at her phone and was not aware. Coming from a war-torn country where there's bombs dropping everywhere, she should have definitely paid attention. I know America is home of the free, land of the brave, but shit happens. I'll end.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's one thing that people have been struck by is that the sort of innocence in her mind, the lack of awareness in her mind, it just makes it all the more cruel, perhaps. But every country is different, and I know that I've had this conversation with people who have grown up in cities in the UK, and they expect that experience to transfer when they go to the United States or other parts of the world, and it simply doesn't. So yeah, it's really hard. It's really painful watching her, just there, no awareness at all. And she probably came out. I don't know what part of Ukraine she came from. I'm not very familiar with Ukraine, so I don't know if she was kind of a village girl or a city girl. But obviously, she hasn't come from a life where she's had to live with any type of hypervigilance or that type of training and that type of awareness of her environment. But I do believe that we all now need to be instilling that in our children. Biospirit?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that her coming from a country that is so homogeneous that she never had to even think about something like that on public transportation. For instance, if she came from Kiev. So I don't blame her for not knowing these things. She was new here and no one told her, and the anti-white narrative told her the exact opposite. And I was also remembering back when I was firmly in the anti-white narrative, and I was coming home from work on the train, and there was only one seat that was still open on the car that I walked in on, and I was like, oh, there's this kind of dorky non-white guy who's kind of sprawled all over both of these two seats. And I was like, I'm really, really tired and I want to sit down. And so I walked over and I said, very loudly, excuse me. And I just plopped myself down. And then I just kind of closed my eyes and relaxed because I was really, really tired. And then I was abruptly woken by, I wasn't really asleep. I just had my eyes closed, but my eyes flew open when he kicked me in the leg and forced and just like stepped on me and to get to the aisle to get out the door. And I yelled at him and, was saying, what the fuck's the matter with you? And the people were turning to me and saying, what did he do? What did he do? And I said, he kicked me in the fucking leg, that asshole. And those are the kinds of things that you run into on public transportation now all the time. Non-whites have absolutely no compunction to behave the way that we expect that people are going to behave. And when our people are so poisoned by the anti-white narrative, they have no idea, because they think that everyone is the same. That is the poisonness that the anti-white narrative puts into all of our people. They're all the same. They just have, a different skin tone, and there's no difference between us and those other people. Well, there is a difference between us and these other people. They don't have the same biospirit, and they don't behave the same way that we do. They don't have the same expectations, the same morality, and our people no longer enforce our excuse me our morality on people.
Well said, brother. Well said. Hans?
So my in-laws traveled to America and they planned the whole trip themselves, and they don't have real money, so they optimize for cost. So at the Niagara Falls, they meet this young American couple, and the couple asked them, where are they staying? And they tell them, and their new friends, their new best friends, tell them, there's no way we're going to let you stay there. But my in-laws insisted. And then the American couple said, well, okay, let's just drive you there. And then when we get there, you can decide. And my in-laws said, it looked like a war zone. They didn't expect that. They come from South Africa and they expect the America that's in the Hollywood movies, where every ghetto black is a civilized person. Yes, they were very relieved to make use of the new friends, their hospitality. But it was also incredibly irresponsible of the travel agents to let them do that. They must know that, okay, that place, maybe if you are a Caribbean drug lord, you can stay there and it will be safe. But if you are, retired white people, a white couple, then absolutely not. Yeah, I don't know how that works.
You have a way of telling stories that I appreciate, Hans. What comes to mind for me is that, I was thinking of a conversation I had with someone recently. They were saying that, going to London and having tea is on their bucket list. And and I was kind of taken aback by that, because that London just that doesn't exist anymore. It's incredible to see just in our own lifetime how so many of the places that we have experienced, that we have loved, that we have lived in. Jason showed that video a couple of streams back of Paris, and there are certainly many other videos of Paris that you can see. It's absolutely wretched, and for many people, I think certainly across the pond, but even in Europe, Paris for me as a young girl, I mean, I went to Paris many times, and I'm devastated that the next generation just will not have those experiences of what Paris was. But yeah, I think a lot of people have these ideas of places that maybe existed once, and now it's changed beyond recognition due to the white erasure of those environments. So there's a couple of other things that I had put in the Jumbotron that I'm interested in people's thoughts on. I had found another video from Michael McCarthy about Liana, so I put that there for anyone who wants to see more of the details. So this Bob Villan, this mixed race degenerate anti-white, I think a lot of people have already seen. He had been celebrating pretty much the death of the late Charlie Kirk, and then he has put out a new statement trying to it's very manipulative, and there's nothing really more repugnant than watching him not even have the spine to stand by his own actions, and now trying to say, oh no, I definitely didn't celebrate it. So that's been in the news. And a couple of other things. I saw that in response to all the firings that have been going on, some group of anti-whites have created a website to help those who have been fired over praising the assassination. I'm not sure how they expect to help those people, but I guess we'll see more of that. But amongst it all, I caught this story from Libs of TikTok about this nurse, Lexi Quensley. I'm not sure how to pronounce her surname, if I'm honest, but she's a nurse at Englewood Health in New Jersey, and she says she was suspended without pay for calling out a surgeon who cheered for Charlie Kirk's assassination. So the doctor who cheered for murder is cool, but the nurse who says maybe we shouldn't celebrate murder gets suspended. And there's not a lot of details on the actual story, but it just struck me, I mean, she's such a beautiful young woman of the West, and she's dedicated her life to nursing and to helping people, and she does the absolute correct and moral thing. And her life is now potentially, who knows what that's going to do in terms of the cost of her job, whether she'll be reinstated, what that will do to her reputation, within the work environment. That's potentially another life just absolutely derailed for simply existing, following our norms, having moral values. So there was that, and the other story that I thought is interesting. I've put it in the Jumbotron, and I can't remember who it was that was speaking, but one of you made some excellent, well, you all made excellent points, but one of the points kind of brought this to my memory. It's a video of a pastor, and his name is Joe Webben. This is from AF Post, and he's basically saying that white parents need to have the talk with their children about avoiding blacks due to their violent nature. That's the quote from AF Post, not from myself. So I thought this was kind of an interesting thing. His position is that you should be telling your children that if you have black people in your church who you're familiar with them, that they love God, they love Jesus, then of course we're not talking about those people, but you must be telling your children that they are 30 times more likely to have, and so on and so on. You can kind of get the general gist of where that's all going. So I thought this was an interesting point of, how we approach keeping our children safe and explaining to them, what areas they shouldn't go to, and what people think about that. So there's a few articles there. I'm interested to hear people's thoughts if they have any. Biospirit.
Yeah, the libs of TikTok one about the nurse Lexi. I posted about that yesterday because it upset me so much to see that the head guy of the hospital, who's a non-white, by the way, who's taking a position of a white man away, and he right away took the the action that he did, which was to suspend her without pay, which is completely unacceptable. This kind of punishment of doing the right thing is what we have to put an end to. And I'm so glad to see that so many of these accounts are calling this out now. And you see just thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of people are contacting these hospitals, government offices, schools, airlines, all of these places that are employing these people and demanding that they be fired, and that people are not willing to put up with this bullshit anymore. And I find it very heartening to see that outpouring. So thank you for bringing that story up. I thought it was a very good one.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I don't think I'd seen your post on it, but I'll have a look for it afterwards and give it a like, certainly. Yeah, I just thought it was terrible. It was just terrible. And I was very moved just seeing her there and thinking about the consequence of this young woman having, it's such a noble role that she's undertaken in nursing, and yeah, potentially the consequences for her life, as you said, for just doing the right thing, it really is sickening. And of course she's not the only one. Hans?
So the problem with the pastor is he is giving his children a physical defense, but is compromising the psychological defense, because what his children is going to see when they leave the house is they're going to see the villain in the anti-white narrative, and then they will be vulnerable to the path that Tyler took. So it's important to frame it correctly, and the way to frame that correctly is to say that the same anti-white narrative that white guilt the white people work on non-whites as well, but they don't get white guilt. They get violent retribution fantasies. And when you go into an environment where they have numerical courage, there are going to be violent anti-whites among them, and the other ones are not going to stop them. So don't go into those environments. Don't surround yourself with people of a different biospirit when you know you are in an anti-white society. And then in that way, you cover the physical defense and the psychological defense. We must always have the moral position, because this is the primary attack vector.
Yeah, super. It's great to be able to see these things and reframe them with, with the Go Free method, and coming from the white positive, coming from a white positive position. And that's why I love these spaces. New Hampshire Patriot, do you have any thoughts on either of these articles? I think it was actually something that you had said about where you're going and so on that triggered my memory of this. Maybe can't speak now. Blue Flame, did you have any thoughts?
Oh, there we go.
There you go.
Oh, it was a bit technical issues once again, it seems. Not really sure I've much to add at this point in time, actually.
Okay, fair enough. Let's have a look. If I had oh, Hans, go ahead. That that's helpful. I'll load something else while you speak as well.
I just want to remark on this Bob Villan person. I didn't even believe it when I heard the first time that his mother was white. But yes, his mother was white, and it is just incredible how sometimes how strong the biological white erasure is. And this is why normal white people object to it. They will not be able to articulate it, but normal white people, they loathe seeing our beautiful variations of hair and eye color and facial features disappear. They loathe that. They don't know how to articulate it, but this is why they instinctually feel it's that thing that Jason calls loss aversion. They feel there's something beautiful that's lost, and we are helping them to articulate that in a moral way by calling it white erasure, and that there's nothing wrong with wanting a white nuclear family. In fact, you are defective if you don't want it, because that means you don't want a future filled with white babies. It's simple as that.
Yeah, well said. And one thing I'll just add about the mixed race thing is that it's very often one of the first things that I hear out of the mouth of people who have a black and a white parent is, well, I'm half white too, so I see both sides. And I've had this conversation with a few people in my time, and I've kind of developed a little, I suppose, hack in my conversation. So I'll say to them, yeah, I mean, I grew up around a lot of non-white people, and that will immediately provoke a response in most situations, in my experience, to say, yes, but you don't understand because you're not black. And I say, yeah, no, I completely agree. And then the mixed race thing will come up, and they'll use this argument of, well, I'm both, so I get it. And I'll say, but actually you don't, because you have no lived experience of being a white person, even though you have some white DNA. And you see the cogs turning, and there's a kind of glorious moment where the mouth just falls and there's nothing coming out, because they've never considered the fact that although they have some white genetics, they have no lived experience. They don't know what it is to move through the world, experience the things that a white man or woman does. So maybe it's something people can use in those type of conversations. Hans?
This is so brilliant. This is so brilliant. Yes, I'm definitely going to use this.
Thank you. Yeah, it was some life experience I can offer on that one. I found the other link to Bob Villan's second video. So the one was there already of the live show where he's, I'm not going to repeat his disgusting words, but yeah, then there's this follow-up video. It's from a post from Vintage Mr. Hobbs, of him basically telling people, oh, calm down, I haven't celebrated his death. Yeah, people can be their own judge of that, and their own judge of his character or lack thereof. By your spirit.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to what Hans was talking about, and my one of my brothers, biologically white erased and married a Amerindian woman, and they had 3 children. And so my niece then married a very blonde man, and their 2 children look very, very European. They're 75% white. So she was always very uh, angry and put out that when she was out in public with her children, that people would come up to her uh, and interact with her as if she were the nanny. And I would think about that, and I was like, well, I can see why that would make you mad, but I can also see why people would think that, because you don't look like your kids at all, just as my brother doesn't look like his children at all, nor does his wife look like the children at all. They're mixed race, and so they it's just a very odd situation for someone who is mixed race, and um, there's just so little continuity of commonality that that people looking at you and your children, they don't even know that they're your children. I think that's really sad.
Yeah, I'm sure that that's a really unpleasant experience for a mother. My heart does, does feel for her. That's a horrible thing to experience as a mother. I've no doubt. And I think it's an important point. It's an important topic because, yeah, we're seeing a change, aren't we? We're seeing a change, certainly online in commentary, and people are starting to have this, renewed understanding that race is not skin deep, as you very well highlighted earlier. But we do have several generations of people who have been raised with that completely programmed into them, that as you said, oh, we're all the same, and that it's completely normal. And I've even heard arguments of, well, it's necessary for the gene pool, and there's been so many things that have been used to normalize biological white erasure. And I feel some hope, and anyway, and that I've seen quite a lot of videos by young people, teenagers, and very early 20s, of young white women making videos and just saying, here I am with my very pale skin, and I am not tanning myself, and I am not, and there's a love there that I think that has been lacking for a lot of people in the last couple of generations. Hans?
I think it was in the last um, stream that Jason mentioned this defense that we have of conserving, maintaining tradition. And then typically what the anti-whites will say is, well, yes, but I mean, there were bad things in the past that we didn't maintain and that we improved. So that's not an argument. Let's see if we can improve the tradition to something better. But there's never a discussion about re-evaluating anti-whiteism, like white erasure, re-evaluating the effect on society of white erasure, like that Putnam report that basically found that every single metric of societal health goes down with white erasure. There's never a discussion or a re-evaluation. And this is one other example that now I identify now, because I now have a new lens, and and this is this biological white erasure. There's never a discussion about or a evaluation about mixed race, even though people know that organ donors, there's not organ donors for these people. They have all sorts of issues, like the one you mentioned just now. Your children don't look like you. Um, so there's not going to be that bond between the parent and the child. Um, so it's never reevaluated because, of course, it's inside the. We are all in the anti-white morality where the the reevaluation happens only in the one direction.
Yeah, I have in mind as well, Hans, the video. I'm sure many people will be familiar with it, of Muhammad Ali being interviewed. I think it was here in Britain, or by a British host, and Muhammad Ali is saying, "No, you and I are not the same. We are not the same in any way, shape, or form, and I want my children to look like me." Uh, and I mention it because you did such a tremendous job of explaining to one of the people in the space yesterday that sometimes these things appear as hypocrisy, but of course they're not hypocrisy. But again, it's that it just highlight that example highlights that if a non-white person says that, there's no issue. People understand it. But as soon as a white person says, well, I don't want to biologically white erase my own lineage, hundreds and thousands of generations of people before me, and I don't want to end that line by mixing with someone of another race, that's considered inflammatory. And again, as I say, it's not hypocrisy. It's anti-whiteism, smack bang in the face. Sorry, janitor. I see your requests and I keep trying to give you a mic, and it seems that every time I do, you're dropping back out. There we go. Go ahead.
Thanks. It was just user error. So, you had actually brought up a mean pathogen about the gene pool, and I thought to myself, how like excited what's Tree Godfather gets when presenting a Westman for the day, and it's like they overcame that and they wielded the forces of nature to do this, and um so to get over like a concern or issue about some anti-white mean pathogen about uh white erasure and how it is beneficial for a gene pool. um I think also that white men can invent and overcome that with all the science and hospital and uh medicine and whatever. So I think and they have a whatever. And if during RFK's latest thing, he was saying to the like Senate or whatever, Congress, that now a bunch of Americans, like millions, are some chronic disease, and then he's saying in the 60s, America had like no chronic disease. And I think that's because of the anti-whiteism. So while I don't think even if a rabid anti-white back then in the 60s, they wouldn't be using some gene pool anti-white mean pathogen, because back then the society of America was healthier, like not on I mean, yeah, not like debilitated. And um so I think that's why that mean pathogen stands out today compared to back then, because rabid anti-white saying it back then, to visualize that would be more difficult.
Janta, I'm not able to respond too much because unfortunately there was a lot of distortion for me, but I did get some of what you said, and so I'll just thank you for your comments. Did anybody else want to add anything on this topic? Otherwise, I've got one last thing that we can look at. Hans?
I just wanted to ask Janitor, so what is RFK's theory about why that is?
I actually think Biospirit might be able to answer that more because I have not paid attention other than like the 1 or 2 times we brought it up in our community.
And if you could, Biospirit, fill me in because I didn't catch what the part was about RFK.
From what I've read and seen about it, when he was talking to or presenting in Congress under them asking him a bazillion questions, is he said that 70% of Americans are now living with an ongoing chronic illness. And that's unprecedented. That back in the 60s, it was zero. We just didn't have this going on. And so he was speculating many different things, from diet to vaccines to all sorts of things. And he would like to get to the bottom of it and have that be the focus of healing the country, that we have to look at things that are not the normal way that people are used to looking at how we fix this. It's not necessarily going to be more pills. It's maybe we need to change our lifestyles. So that was the gist of what I gleaned from listening to what he was saying on the interview.
Hans, did that answer your question, or did you have any follow-up?
Yes, that answered it. Thanks. A good comprehensive answer. I give you 5 out of 5.
We expect no less than the best from Biospirit of the West. Okay, well, I guess to wrap up with this final story. Before I do, let me just mention, so far left of the Jumbotron is the story that I'm about to come into, but one to the right of it is the post that I referenced earlier from Ardent Party. It's a YouTube short. I encourage parents or anybody who takes care of children to check it out, because so many young people are playing Roblox. I think it's something very important to be aware of, to be able to check what your children are exposing themselves to, and to know about these potential risks with Roblox. So make sure to bookmark it if that's something of interest to you, so that you can find it after the space. So yeah, last story that I have for today. This came from Wall Street Apes, and it basically says an American moved to Marengo, Illinois, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, and planted sunflowers, fruits, and vegetables. The garden got a little too close to the road corner. The city told her to clean it up, and she did. The next thing she knows, the city sends workers to take out her entire garden, now saying that this is city property. They later confirm with her if she never planted it near the corner of the road, by the turn, this wouldn't be happening, she says. This feels like retaliation. Does our government really have nothing better to do than to send taxpayer-funded workers to rip out a home garden because it's a little too close to the road? And there's an accompanying video. I know that there are several people who attend these spaces who are keen on gardening, and I thought this would catch a nerve with some of you perhaps. But yeah, it was really sad to see these men arrive at her home, and she has no say, no control at this point, and they just start ripping out all of her tomato plants and food that she's grown. So yeah, I thought that this was a great example of some white erasure, and I'm not surprised to see Biospirit's hand up, so let me come straight to you.
Yeah, I remember this story. I saw it several days ago on X, and my immediate response to it was I was horrified because I'm a gardener, and if anyone did that to my front yard, I would have a heart attack. I'd probably go out and shoot them. But then I looked at the video a bit more closely, and when you see the camera pans farther so that you're kind of looking up the street, and then you're looking down the street, so you can see what the rest of the street looks like. And so what she did really was inappropriate for the neighborhood. If you're just looking straight on at her house, it looks very idyllic and kind of like a country cottage out in the middle of nowhere. But if you see it in the context of the neighborhood, I think if I were her neighbor, I would not be happy with what she did, because the way that all of the houses in the neighborhood is that the houses are set back, and everyone has this green lawn and in the front, and then there's a sidewalk and then street trees. So this is the way it's the ethos of the neighborhood, right? So she went all the way up to the sidewalk from her house and planted all of this stuff, and the city is saying that is a median, and it's part of like it's like there's the road, then there's where the tree planting is, then there's where the sidewalk is, and then there's a median between the sidewalk and the homes, and that is city property, and that's what she encroached on. So she planted her garden somewhere that wasn't her property. And so when you really look into the story, she's the villain. She should not have done what she did. And to me, when I really looked into the story, she just decided she was going to do what she wanted to do and screw everybody else who lives around her. And now she's paying the consequences for that. So I really lost my my feeling for sympathy for her when I saw more of what the story was about.
Well, that's very interesting, and thank you for the additional context. Obviously, it does change the story. I still feel it's a little sad that society seems to have fallen to a point where the city, the council, whatever the name of the body that deals with this is, can't resolve this in a more just in a better fashion, I suppose is what I want to say. It's a shame that they can't, have a conversation with her, send her some letters, communicate, make it clear where the line is. It still kind of feels heavy-handed. I don't know, maybe if you don't feel that after seeing the full story, it is interesting to hear that context. So yeah, thank you for that. Hans?
Well, this must be one nice neighborhood. There's no electric fences. You can have a garden where anyone can just walk in and harvest your produce, and there's no problem. I would like a Western civilization where this is the most serious problems that we have to address.
I think you would have caught there were several thumbs up. Yeah, I think everyone can relate to that comment, but you certainly, that makes sense. Well, I think that's it from me for today. I don't have any other, well, actually I do. I have a ton of other news stories, but I think they're all a bit long to start at this time. So we'll leave those for another day. I'll come around for final thoughts, and we'll wrap up unless anyone else has anything else that they wanted to bring up. So otherwise, New Hampshire Patriot, your final thoughts. Okay, I think he might still be away from Mike. Blue Flame, any final thoughts?
Yeah, a lot of interesting topics brought up again, and yeah, seeing seeing the injustices of like that nurse being fired and what have you. I think it, in a certain sense, it's very good that the people are finally starting to show some teeth in return. Like I can't help but wonder why it took as long as it did, but I guess with Irina first and then with Mr. Kirk next, it was too much, and yeah, finally people are making a stand for themselves. The big question is, of course, what is going to come out of that, and this is going to open a vacuum that white well-being needs to fill, for an actual healing in society and not just a change of tyrants. Um, and that is, yeah, that is something that we're working on, of course. Was there anything else worth adding there? I suppose also, yeah, with these anti-whites who are now setting things up so they have like what, a sort of safety net for other anti-whites who get fired for this evil that they're trying to spread. It has to be said, guys, that is what an anti-white on the run looks like. They probably, yeah, they have a lot of positions that they are contaminating in society right now, from which they can siphon off money, or whatever it's going to be, and of course they're going to abuse the power that they have to do that, right? On the other side of that is they're clearly on they're clearly on the back foot, and that's where they deserve to be and need to be kept further and further. Let them waste money on all of this. Let them put their time into this, their energy, so that it stops being, well, so that at same time energy and money otherwise doesn't go into instilling even more harm into society. Of course it's going to be there, but it's clearly being made difficult on them right now, and that is always good. That is, I still call it the skirmishes, but it is certainly an initial, a little win, and that's the glimmer of hope that that might encourage even more people to come out and do what needs to happen, so we can reclaim the West. So yeah, all around pretty good, and with that said, I suppose, yeah, you all enjoy the rest of your day or your evening, and talk to you all later. Bye bye.
Bye, Blue Flame. Thank you. And yeah, those glimmers of hope, we have to take those. We run with them and work with them. It's an upliftment. There's enough bad things that we get to see every day. So the glimmers are all good. Biospirit, final thoughts?
Yes, I wanted to bring up one final thing that I noticed last night when I was doing some outreach, and I posted these in the OT chat, which is that I noticed that there are people who are posting to try to get us to um, contact people's employer and get them fired. And if you look intently and really look at what is being presented in some of these, they're not giving you the evidence that the person actually did anything wrong. And so I'm cautioning our advocates to be very careful, really, really look closely at what is being presented as evidence, and don't be duped into harming our own people because anti-whites are setting us up to do that. And I'm concerned about this because I think that this may be how the anti-whites are going to shut this down, is that they're going to plant things like this, and then they're going to take it to the media and say, look at these awful people, what they're doing to these innocent people. So I really want us to be very careful and make sure that the people that we're going after for anti-whiteism are actually guilty of anti-whiteism before we do it, so that we're not harming our own people. Okay, and thank you. This was a really good gathering, and I enjoyed your company, one and all. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Biospirit, and that's fabulous, fabulous advice that you've given, and a really important point to raise. Yeah, I'll look out for your post on that as well. Thank you very much. Thank you. Hans, final thoughts from you.
So we started with William Marshall, the first Earl of Pembroke, and this was, of course, a tradition that we lost, the tradition where the political leaders were able to hold their own in single combat. Now, we just recently, Conor McGregor retired from the political race, but that would have been, I mean, William Marshall was a champion in combat sports of his time, and we almost had another champion in combat sports going for the top spot. But let's hope maybe in a few years he tries again.
Yeah, good link, Hans. Thank you very much. Well, just as something nice to leave you all with, and my final thought, if you look on the far left of the Jumbotron, there's a very cute 1-minute clip of a puppy with his new favorite game of being picked up by this machine and spun around as if it's his own personal fairground. And if you're a dog lover, I'm sure you'll love the clip. It certainly made me smile, and I hope it brings a smile to your day as well. But that is it from me for today. So this has been the Monday edition of the Shade Tree White Wellbeing, No White Guilt Space. You can find us here daily on X at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We practice the Go Free lexicon and concepts as developed by Jason Kuna, Mr. No White Guilt himself. You can find him here on X as at No White Guilt NWG, and elsewhere as simply No White Guilt. You can find his work online at nowhiteguilt.org. Thank you all for coming, speakers and listeners alike. It's been wonderful as always to be in your company and hear everyone's thoughts and contributions. The Shade Tree will be back tomorrow, so we hope to see you again then. That's 7 p.m. UK time, 2 p.m. US Eastern Standard Time. So please do join us for that. Until then, for those of you in the evening like me, a peaceful evening ahead. And to everyone else, have a fabulous white positive day and stay safe out there. I leave you once again with my sincere thanks for being part of today's The Shade Tree Space. Bye-bye.
Are you noticing changes in our country you find troubling? Do you feel unsafe and at a loss to remedy these fundamental shifts? Have you found the book Go Free by Jason Kuna? The Go Free method provides excellent meme curatives and specific language skills to overcome the anti-white psychological warfare being waged against us across the West. Go Free, a guide to aligning with the archetype of Western kind by Jason Kuna, available on Amazon.
Our children are priceless, and we would do anything to protect them. So why aren't you using Go Free to protect them from the most harmful ideas? Decades in the making, Go Free is a simple yet brilliant practice designed to free us from destructive socio-political ideas. As words are the tools with which we think, Go Free promotes precise, simple, and targeted language to counteract psychological warfare. When you go free of the system's control over your word choice, you liberate your thinking. As you grow, you can empower others. And the most important thing you can do is inoculate our children against the ideas that are meant to harm them.